Okay, hello everybody. Thank you so much for joining us in this Campfire Live session. I'm Diego Núñez, the DLF manager at InVision. The Campfire Live series is an extension of the conversations that happen in the DLF Slack workspace. If you don't have access there, please let me know. So if you want to lead a conversation, please post your question or topic in the Campfire channel, and we will reach out to you in the future. If you're not a member of the DLF, please apply at designleadership.com and we will review your application. And if you're accepted, you will join these amazing leaders. Today, we will be talking with Adam Perlis, CEO at Academy. Today's topic is really controversial, requiring a design challenge in the hiring process. So get ready for some hot conversations. This event is sponsored by InVision Freehand. And before we get started, I want to remind everyone that this session is being recorded and is open for all of us to participate. So if you want to speak or ask a question, please raise your hand using the button of Zoom, and I will gladly give you the word. So let's start the fire. Hi, Adam. Thank you so much for letting us lead. How are you doing?
No, doing great. Thank you so much, Diego. Thanks for having me.
Okay, that's great. Before we start with the actual conversation, can you give us a little context of what Academy is and what you wrote there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just give a brief background about myself, why I'm even part of the Design Leadership Forum, and then I'll tell you a little bit about Academy. So I've been a designer for over 15 years in my career. My most recent roles were I was the head of design for Time Magazine. I oversaw the redesign of Time, Fortune, and Money.com. I've also been the head of design and UX for some major agencies, including AKQA in New York, BeReal in New York. I also ran a lab at AT&T out of New York for several years. And so I'm a designer myself, but now I started my own agency, Academy, about 5.5 years ago. We are a flexible product design agency, very unique space that we kind of play in that we offer studio team services, building apps, websites, experiences, but we also offer staffing and recruiting services to our clients. So, you know, whether you need a full team, an individual resource, or several resources, you know, we can help you find them. Or if you want to build out your own full-time team, we can also help you find talent in that sphere too. And, you know, we're kind of uniquely qualified to do it because we're practitioners ourselves, right? I've trained every person on our team. All our recruiters are now fully versed on, you know, the distinctions between a systems designer and a UI designer. And so, you know, we really have a pretty rigorous system of evaluation for the people that come through our doors, and working with big clients like Under Armour and Wish and several others that we actually, some of which we've met through this community. So thank you for that. But yeah, that's a little bit about me, and yeah, turn it back to you, Diego, to ask a few other questions.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing that. Let's start the actual fire, Adam. Yes. So can you tell us a bit about why you asked this question to the DLF?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, as I kind of mentioned, it's kind of my job to know a little bit about the hiring process. And, you know, our day-to-day conversations are often with heads of design, talking about some of the challenges that they're facing, whether that's candidates who may not want to do a design challenge, or deciding whether it's the right thing for their organization. And so as I've been conducting lots of research and interviewing design leaders really across the community, I thought, hey, why not post, you know, to the entire community a poll to see, you know, what people are actually doing. And it was great. I yielded some great results. And so that was really the impetus to why I asked the question in the first place, to really learn and help us grow as an organization. And then it actually turned into a really interesting community-led conversation, which is why we're speaking today. It may just be me, but Diego,
no, it was my fault. So now let's hear, what do you think of requiring a design challenge? I know you are doing some research for a few months, I think now, right? But what's your point of view?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm happy to share it, and I'll probably share more later as I hear more, you know, from you guys, because we'll turn the conversation to the, you know, rest of the community. But, you know, in conducting my research, I think that there's a few different ways that really you can see it, right? You have to see it from the point of view of the hiring manager. You have to see it from the point of view of the talent that may be applying for the job. And I think there are a variety of different opinions that really on both sides of those two tables vary. There's some people who love design challenges. There's some people who don't. And they could be on the talent side, they can be on the hiring manager side. I think where I've personally landed is it depends. It depends on the organization. It depends on the needs of that particular organization. They are the ones kind of controlling whether or not it happens. Although I've seen our fair share of candidates who put themselves, I guess, in the driver's seat and say, well, I'm not going to apply to a role then, right? That requires it, or I'm going to withdraw from the process because I don't want to do it because I have maybe an ethical issue with it, right? But for the most part, I would say the control is in the hands of the companies because they're the ones, offering the job. I think that the middle ground that I've personally come to is if you are going to insist on doing some sort of design challenge, because I do think that it is a huge time commitment for most people who are applying for a job that likely have another job already, is to do some sort of collaborative exercise during the interview process. So, this can be a task like, and I'll give an example. I interviewed with Google about, it was probably like 3.5 years ago, something like that. They had approached me. I said, okay, well, if Google's calling, I got to take the call. So I interviewed with them, went through the whole process. They did not have a design exercise, and they instead did a collaborative exercise, and we had to solve like a random problem. It was like, all right, you live in New York, right? And I was like, yeah. He's like, all right, well, one of the big problems in New York is like you can't get a package delivered to your door because someone might steal it, right? So he's like, how would you design a solution, right, around this problem? And like, he's like, take me through the steps. What's your process? And so we walked through my process together and my thinking and verbally just kind of talked through it. And I thought that was it was a pretty good, I think, happy medium between a design exercise and a way to kind of show our collaborative work, what it could be like in the way that I really think and process both thoughts and structure my process. And I thought that was pretty effective. But I will say that one part of the design process that kind of stood out to me, or the interview process stood out to me, was that even though like we went through that process, like I didn't have like a tangible thing at the end of it that I could like show him and be like, no, but like I'm so much more than this thinking, and so what I did was I actually went ahead after our interview and I spent like a few hours that night, like literally sketching it all out and designing it and making it look really pretty and like sending it to them so that they could see like my ability as a designer. So I took the initiative to go do that. And so I almost wished they gave me a design exercise because I'm like, I could show you the cleanest, most beautiful Figma file, but they that's not what their organization, I guess, needed. But either way, I just wanted to share that story from a designer or a talent, perspective where I desired it. Yeah, that's a little bit about my experience, my POV on it. But I totally understand all sides of it now. And I would love to hear, maybe, unless Diego, you have some more questions, I'd love to kind of turn it back to the community to ask, to kind of present your guys' point of view on each of it. And yeah, maybe there's some solutioning here that we can come up with on the fly.
Yes, I do have more questions, but let's hear someone from the community. I think, for example, Andres, we were talking earlier this week about something similar. Your way, he will tell you more. Andres, if you can jump in.
Yep, sure, I can jump in. What were you referring to earlier this week?
We were talking about the design challenges on your side, because he works at Oracle NetSuite, I'm sorry, and we were talking about if he's on the I want design challenges or no. Yes.
Yeah, correct. So I think that we fall in a pretty much in the middle. So across the years, I've seen different ways of tackling a design challenge. And in general cases, I could map them to startups or some sorts of newer companies would ask for a design challenge that would take a lot more time from the practitioners or the candidates. that they would expect, I don't know, but maybe between 4 hours or more, maybe just a few days to present something really polished as you were describing, Adam. I think that the key there is how do you present it? Because most of the times when I hear from the candidates that have gone through those experiences and been myself, when not presented clearly, it's like, hey, you're making me work for free. So what's your win over here, right? And then
Right.
that discomfort is already present in the conversation. So one of the things that we do, on the other hand, is maybe a little bit more similar to what you were describing from Google. So it's like mostly like emulating a day in the life of a designer. So we would ask you to arrive maybe with 1 or 2 hours of time to spend with us. We would present you over there a pretty simple, and the beauty of it is simplicity, because a very simple task, like I don't know, any of them, just figure out how to create an invoice that lets us split I don't know, one single order in 2 different shipping addresses. It seems so simple, and it's announced in such a simple way that the results of that are never the same. So the way in which you would navigate through it is, let's have half an hour to meet with your PM, your tech lead, your probable manager, and have an open conversation, get to know each other, then an hour to figure out this problem in any way you want, right? So it's either whiteboard or pen and paper or Figma if you wanted, whatever you want. And the final half hour would be like any review session that you do at the end of a sprint or something like that. Like, it's like, well, tell us about your solution. How far have you come? Which processes have you put in place? What was your rationale? Did you need to do some research? How did you understand? Were you familiar with, I don't know, an e-commerce flow before this, or were you not? So that allows you to understand a little bit more, not only about the sorts of tools or skills that person has in their acumen, but also how do they tackle it from an attitude perspective. Do they ask for questions? Do they ask for more clarity? Do they take it with a joyful attitude? Does it stress them out? How do they feel about all of this? How do they present? Are they good presenters? Do they outline a presentation for their fellow future mates so that they can articulate clearly and the rest of the audience understand? Are they open to feedback and questions while they are presented? And yes, we're very clear in the letter of the exercise. If you want, you're never going to get to a pixel perfect solution in an hour. That's not what we're expecting. We do not want a polished outcome or artifact. What we want to see is much more, how do you do your work? What motivates you? How do you tell your story? And that is very, very useful because, well, I think I've mentioned a few of those already, but it gives you a very clear perspective of how that candidate can or cannot take the sorts of challenges and tasks that you'll put them through. If they're just on spot for the work that you're announcing, a little bit below, a little bit over. If it's over, what else can I ask from them? Do I have another position open? So lots of different perspectives and lenses present to you very clearly in a very small investment of time, right? It's an hour, tops 2 hours. If they really, really, really engage, maybe they would ask for an extra half an hour. And hey, just let me give you a little bit more of my rationale. Let me explain you a little bit better.
Okay.
I think
and that builds a relationship. That's
yeah.
the beauty of it.
I love that. I think you really expressed it beautifully, even better than I did, Andreas, in my experience. I think, especially when you're talking about a product organization, right? And I assume that's I think you're from
Yes.
Oracle, you'd mentioned, so you're definitely more of a product organization as I understand it. And like those type of exercises make a lot of sense because you're going to be in the trenches with these people, right? And this is a great simulated environment where it's high pressure, it's 1 hour, but it's only 1 hour, right? It's not a huge time commitment, and you really learn a lot about that person in that hour. One thing I wanted to bring up, and I'll frame it for the group, because some of the people here may work at different types of organizations. So like one of our clients, for example, is, I won't mention them by name, but they're one of the top 5 consulting firms in the world. And they require a design challenge, right? It's a take home. They can take as much time as they want. They say there's no time limit. You can send it to us whenever is convenient for you, because we know that it's a huge commitment. But they do ask them to put together a presentation, and they say like, look, we want you to like design a few screens, like present a new company that like to one of our clients, because this consultancy like incubates small businesses for their larger clients. And they're like, here's the business, like we want you to design a few screens for it and present it back to us. How would you structure a presentation? Because they do this every day, right? Like that's all they do is put together these pitch decks. And they kind of like let them do it their own model. And for them, like this is a great way to evaluate, the type of environment that they work in, right? And so that's why they really value these design exercises. And I have to say that among the candidates we present to them and those who have gone through this process, there are people who've interviewed extraordinarily well and then failed the design challenge because they really they couldn't put together a great deck, right? Like this is a core responsibility. So I just wanted to like kind of throw that out there back to the group and say, some of you work in different industries. Some of you may be for a design challenge. Maybe some of you may be against it. Can you maybe, can someone from a different industry, maybe outside of, product, offer a perspective here?
Mark, do you have something to say?
I do, but I'm going to let folks answer Adam's question first,
Laura,
and I'll jump in.
Hello. All right.
Hey.
My hand. Here we go. Yeah, also from a product org in terms of where I've experienced, but I think, Andres, as you were talking, I think one thing we haven't really talked about is what sort of challenge for what purpose, right? I think that I personally am against homework. I do not believe in making someone do something that is not synchronous. So I do not believe in doing a design challenge that's sent home, because instead I do a portfolio review where they talk me through specific design choices. So there it's about hearing the designer's rationale for design decisions. I used to do when I had a job, a collaborative exercise that was really centered on how do you ask questions and problem frame and interact with feedback from product management and engineering, who I would have in the room, right, for that 1 hour challenge, to basically understand, how do they make sense of something that is very ambiguous. But something that I've always struggled with that is I do think it can default to a particular type of person. And so one reason I really wanted to join this discussion was, how do people think about justice and inclusion in this topic? Because the thing about challenges, particularly if they're synchronous, is now you're judging how they collaborate. And what if they're not your classic extrovert, I will talk to anyone and I can think out loud?
Yeah.
I'd love to hear how folks are handling that, because I'm starting to think now in the future about dropping them because of this issue of, is it excluding candidates that don't think a different way? So that's something I'm really curious about. But totally, Andres, like, I agree with you. It's not about the design solution at that point. It's about this like fuller kind of experience of wrestling a
Mhm.
problem.
Mm. I have a
Mark?
question. Oh, sorry,
yeah,
Mark
yeah.
has
Go ahead,
something to
Adam.
say.
Go ahead, Adam. If the question
Go
is
ahead,
for
Mark.
Laura, go ahead, please.
The question is for Laura, but Mark, was it for Laura as well?
Yeah, I was just going to plus one to everything that Andrea and Laura had said. We at InVision, so I'm a director of design over at InVision, we have removed the design exercise and then added it back in and removed it, flexed over time. Portfolio reviews seem like a great way of getting people to present confidently about the work that they've personally put together for us that we found. But I think there is something so key about that collaborative experience. And it speaks to what Laura was saying, that, we all collaborate in very, very different ways. Some of us a little bit more introvert, some of us more extrovert. And something that I've always found to be really interesting is bringing cross-functional partners into the conversation first. So maybe it's a small exercise with just 3 or so people, including the candidate, but getting them to think cross-functionally and build those relationships, but also offering people the opportunity to take the exercise away for half an hour and spend a bit of time personally and then come back. I think just to try and cater for people like me who do better thinking off a call and then coming back onto it rather than thinking and reacting in the moment.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I was going to I want to just piggyback on that, Mark, and kind of respond to what Laura said or ask a question about it. Because I think while certainly, yeah, I agree, like portfolio review should get a lot of information from that, right? That's like an opportunity they've had to prepare for their presentation from both a, actual presentation standpoint, speaking, and also, visually, right? And then from a collaborative exercise standpoint, as Andreas pointed out, like great opportunity to determine, well, how will they work with others? But as Laura pointed out, right, like, are we evaluating the right things, right? We may not need this person to be presenting in front of the executive leadership team, right? Maybe it's actually better that they're more of an introvert and they're like great at being in their own space and like being heads down and work and like banging stuff out and producing a lot, right? I think like those collaborative exercises can still be there, right? You can still have them and evaluate, oh, is this person good at this thing or not? But there may be things, as you evaluate them, like, oh, well, they dial up super high on this one, but they're a little lower on this one, but that's okay. Laura, you had raised your hand.
Yeah, I guess, I hear your point about like kind of leaning into their strengths, but I do think like, we should hire as much for potential growth, not just what they do today. So I think like, even if they don't like love standing in front of a bunch of people and presenting, it doesn't mean we can't coach them there. So I hear what you're saying, like maybe they just want to be heads down, but I don't know, that feels like a bit of an assumption that I think we have to be careful of.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. I think it's more about, I was just kind of framing it up as examples, but like more that, yeah, like maybe the evaluation criteria we're looking for really needs to be tailored to like both the person and also the role that you're like looking to fill. Like if they are an introvert and not like, it's hard for you to see the potential in them being able to grow out of this quick enough to fill the role that you're trying to fill right now, right? Like maybe they are going to be presenting every day in front of either clients or in front of an executive team. That might be hard to like get them there just, very quickly. But kind of, I think tailoring the approach is kind of the right way to think about it.
Okay, Julia, please.
Sure, although I think Kurt might have had his hand up before me.
He was first.
I think it was you. You beat me.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I really second like everything Laura said. And when I was a manager, I never gave design challenges and sort of did the same setup with the portfolio review and something a little more collaborative, and sort of came to some of the same conclusions that Laura talked about. Hi, Katie. But I sort of wanted to bring in a slightly different point as well. I've actually spent the past 6 years teaching UX at various boot camps around the country, and really focusing on like teaching new designers and bringing new people into the field. And it's sad, but I've literally spent like weeks towards the end of every program teaching them how to go through a design challenge when it's asked from a company. And, you know, I sort of feel like frustrated as an instructor that I have to waste so much time like practicing design challenges. And like I would go through the kind of challenge like that Adam was talking about, and like how to go through and present that and put the challenge together, and like that would take time. And you know, and I would also tell them, you know, like really you should ask for payment. It's not fair that they're like asking you to do this for free. And just all the different points I have to go over and so much time I have to spend teaching, you know, something that may or may not be asked, but I have to include it because it may be asked, and it's something to help someone get their first job out of a boot camp. And just from an instructor point of view, it was pretty frustrating. And I did, like Laura said, I had some people who were just like, could not like, just couldn't do it. Like they're just can't, they just don't have that kind of personality and would just really struggle. And some people who were more extroverted and would be like, yeah, no problem. But like, yeah, so I just wanted to bring in a slightly different perspective. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Julia. We're almost at the half an hour mark. If we can continue the conversation, but are you okay with that, Adam? Can you keep the conversation for a few more minutes?
Yeah, absolutely. You guys continue the conversation, and I'll just ping somebody and move my meeting, but I can absolutely stay on.
Okay, so Kurt, you're next, please. Let's hear
I actually won't get to all of it because I have a hard stop. I've got a meeting that I have to lead in 1 minute. So, but I did want to say I direct a design team at Yahoo. It's product design. We're all over the place. I've been here about 10 years and I've seen all of it. Like we've done no design challenges, we've done always design challenges. And we've come to the conclusion that it's really not, like Andres said, it's not about the solution they come up with, it's how they arrived at it. And that's really what's important. We always give a solution, well, not always. We give solution or design challenges that have nothing to do with the job they're going to do. But we want to see how they think. And so because of that, it really doesn't matter how beautiful the result is. You know, it has to be competent, of course, but more important is that it's well thought out and that they are collaborating. That's the main thing. And I just wanted to give an anecdote. I lost somebody on my team. She was from Tel Aviv, great designer, and we didn't get her promoted like we should have. She left dissatisfied, but we've kept in contact, but she's a great person, great designer. And the company that she went to did something very interesting, I thought. They gave her a design challenge, but then when she came back, and it wasn't on the spot, it was a homework thing, but I think that's only because some people don't think well on the spot. I would hate that. I'd rather have homework personally so I could take my time. They came back, she presented, and then the team that she would be working with together critiqued it, gave feedback, and then came up with a better solution, because that's the iterative process that we all go through. No one's expected to come up with the right solution the next day. And so how she took that feedback, how she worked with the team, how they worked with her, that was something new that I'd never seen before, which I'd like to try. So, you know, are they defensive? Are they open? You're going to come up with a better solution together than you would alone. So we don't want lone wolves, we want team players. So that was really important to me, and that's something that we're going to try in the future. And now I'm late to my own meeting, so I'm gonna have to say goodbye, but thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. Great insight. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's hear from you.
Just to wrap up, because I think that we touched tangentially in some really interesting topics. One of them being, well, what do we open positions to? So am I needing precisely a senior designer, or am I open to finding a more junior one in the process, or even a more skilled one? What sort of flexibility do I have when hiring? How does this collaborative work, a challenge, or conversation help me understand where would the candidates fit better, and what are the opportunities that they will have in the future? Are they ready already, and they're coming like, let's say, a terrible word, overqualified? Is that the perception? Is there room for them to join the team, the organization, or what? And then how do we prepare them for not only for the conversation, but also for the portfolio review? One of the things that happens the most is people get really, really stressed and ask a lot on what should I have in my portfolio when it's my first job as a designer? Where do I get examples from? How do I create them? And some of them end up putting the design challenges that they've done for other companies into their portfolios, which sometimes work, some other times it just doesn't. You know already, you can identify what other companies have they been applying to and how did that go, which it has a smell of something that's weird when it arrives to your desk, right? It's like, well, I know this. I've seen this before. How is this different from others? It's a little bit more of the same, and it ends up resonating with something that I call. This is very personal reference. I call it the Neo syndrome. Remember that scene of The Matrix? I know kung fu. It's like, okay, we can all follow a process. That's what we're teaching as Julia was sharing. But how does that make us different? And how does that put us in the right situation and applying the right thinking into what we're being asked to do? So
Okay.
I'll leave you with that. Maybe a little bit farther from the original topic, but yeah.
This is
Thank
great.
you, Andres. Adam, do you have like any closing thoughts or a conclusion that you can share before we wrap
Yeah.
up this session?
Absolutely. I mean, we heard so many great ideas here. I mean, some of the things that stood out are that, you know, I don't know if we actually had like a full representative sample of like all the opinions. I think there are some people who are like voraciously against, you know, design challenges. Like they were like, nope, like we were only going to do a portfolio review and that's it. I think the group today was definitely more in the middle, which I actually very much appreciate because I think that's where I sit as well. I think I like the idea of the combination of the portfolio interview along with the you know, the collaborative exercise is kind of like for me the sweet spot where you can learn enough about the person with those two things. And then the other things that stood out is like the evaluation criteria, right? Like, yes, like there's like kind of this idealist view of like what this perfect, you know, person might look like. You know, they're super outgoing, they're a great presenter, they're a leader, but they also are a great designer and great problem solver. But the reality is that actually that doesn't suit the needs of every single team at every single time, right? You can't have all Michael Jordans on the team, I like to say, you know, like you need a few Scottie Pippens and Dennis Rodmans. And if, you know, everybody understands the sports reference, I think, you know, so that's what it takes to grow a team. And I think for those of us who have been in, you know, leadership positions for a little bit longer than some maybe the newer folks who maybe have just joined a leadership position, you start to learn that you actually don't need all those rock stars, right? So I'd say that that's something that very much stood out. I loved what I think it was Kurt was his name just pointed out that like they do a design challenge, but you know, or like he likes the idea of doing the design challenge, but like kind of framing it differently than like, hey, here's a bunch of work to do, like come back to us and we'll evaluate you. It's like, no, like we're gonna like work on this problem together. Like, you know, here's like kind of the setup, but like when you present this back to us, we're gonna collaborate on it and like work on it as like together and solve the problem as a team. And I thought that was an interesting reframing of like, hey, go do a bunch of work for us for free. And it's like, no, like we want to see how we all can work together. You're going to help set up kind of the bones of this, but like show us like how we work as a team together. So I like that reframing, especially in organizations that will kind of need it, right? Like I talked about the consultancy, like I get why they're asking for this type of thing, especially for maybe people who have never worked in that world before. That's a really big part of it. So I get why they ask. So I think that would be a nice way for them to kind of reframe it. And then, yeah, I had some other things, but I kind of lost my train of thought. But I hopefully that was a good summation of some of the main points that we heard today, and I certainly learned a lot.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody, especially Adam for co-leading this session. I will be sharing this tomorrow via email and on Slack workspace. So please, if you're not part of the DLF, join at designleadership.com and we will review your application. Thank you so much for attending. And again, Adam, thank you for hosting
Thank you all.
this conversation with me.
Thank you, Diego. Thank you, Mark. And thank you, Andreas and Jessica, for sticking around and your thoughtful opinions.
Thank you all. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye, everybody.